Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And it's banned
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. And we did it, guys. We made it to Batman Begins.
Yes. Which, ironically, right now, is airing in theaters. This was something that right now, I don't know when the audience is going to hear this, but right now we're recording this in August, the first day of August. And of course, because of the pandemic situation, they're opening theaters but relaunching old movies. And right now, it's kind of cool that Batman Begins, which was done in 2005 by obviously Christopher Nolan, is being launched today in theaters, just to kind of make sure that people kind of get that experience. So I mean, it's a really, really cool experience if you're, to get to see this on the big screen again, which of course I didn't get to do. Just rewatched it on the DVDs that
I see what you're saying. I thought you didn't see it on the big screen at all. I was like,
no, I did. Like, okay. I would have been jumping if I didn't see it to the big screen at all. I'd be jumping to the big. I'm like, oh my god, this is the first time I get to see it on the big screen. This is awesome.
You're saying, yeah, I watched it on Netflix. I was like, all right, here we go. Because I'm not jumping at the chance to go back to the theaters right now.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's going to be like, well, one, Tenet is going to be the thing that makes me even consider going to the theaters.
Yes.
And even then I'm like, I'm going to want to wait a bit to see what like happens with people going to the movies.
I'm definitely conflicted about what's going to happen with Tenet coming out whenever it does come out. I'm going to be like, oh, I don't know if it
comes out next year, I'll feel more comfortable because at least there'll be more time for me to assess like how the movie theater situation is going, because I am not convinced it's going to go great.
Yeah, for me personally, I will be okay doing it in the fall if the schools go back and there's a lot less people during the daytime showings, and I can go during like the first showing of the day where everything's cleaned and all that kind of stuff. No one else is there. I'd be much more comfortable doing that than going Saturday or Friday night or something like that. You know, the traditional opening. Yeah, just don't feel comfortable with that at all, because the idea of, we know masks are going to be mandatory indoors. We know it. It already is. The issue is, how are you going to monitor that in a dark theater? Like, no one, someone just slips it off, and what are you going to do? Like, nothing can happen. So it's a very unsafe situation right now in terms of cinemas and all that kind of stuff. But apparently, according to a couple of research papers, and we're getting off track here, but the airflow in cinemas is very, very different than office. So apparently they say it's safer, but whatever. I don't know.
I don't know about that. I've heard people who work at cinemas are like, that's not true.
Yeah, I'm like, I know very little about epidemiology and all that kind of stuff. If people are saying that, but I'm just like, whatever. I'm
sure they needed to get someone to say that before they reopened this quickly.
Yeah.
I'm sure they found someone that was like, I don't know if you look at it from this angle. Yep. Anyway, let's talk about Batman Begins and not talk about stuff that might not even be a factor by the time this episode comes out.
Correct. So, Batman Begins. This is a film that, well, because of when we started this podcast, and I forget which year we started this podcast, we never actually got to review Batman Begins, but I got to do The Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. Obviously.
We did not.
No, we didn't get to that?
We started this in 2015.
Oh, really? Okay. Shit. So I guess. Oh shit. So we're gonna be able to.
You still have those movies to get to.
That's awesome. Sick.
But yeah, I think what's interesting about this is we started with the Richard Donner Superman. We talked about the influence it had on Kevin Feige. Which we haven't got to a Kevin Feige Marvel movie yet, even though he did help on X-Men. But we haven't got to the MCU yet. Mm-hmm. We've got to the first filmmaker I feel like has actively said Donner is like his blueprint for making films. He talked about it in casting, but I feel like when we rewatch this movie, you can see how like it's same pacing. I think he does a better job of entertaining before you get to the Batman reveal, but I
Correct.
feel like it's similar timing of waiting to actually be able to see
Oh yeah.
Batman and Superman in the respective movies. And the one thing I'll say that Christopher Nolan improved on was making it so that you're waiting all this time for Batman, but the villain is so intertwined with Bruce Wayne and Batman that it all feels like you're building towards something, as opposed to Superman, where you're like, but he's just over there doing this, and I
Yeah.
guess Superman's doing his own thing.
Yeah, I find in this one the Nolan does such a good job of establishing Batman as the character. Introducing
symbol.
introducing this Batman, what his motivations are, why
Mhm.
he's doing these, how he was lost,
I
all
agree.
those kind of things, all those motivations that are very, very real and human, and kind of made something of this that was very, very cool. And at the same time, the thing that I loved most about this, because he really makes sure that he establishes Gotham itself as a character, versus Tim
Mhm.
Burton, like obviously was more. I
It was
think
a visual thing.
it's a
You're like, I
visual
get it.
set design thing, as opposed to
I actually, the more I think about it, the more I realize you really get into the nitty gritty of Gotham as it pertains to like the mayor and the district attorney and what they were willing to like turn a blind eye to in order to like have this pageantry. So I don't actually agree. I think that like there's more world building in Batman Begins, but I do think that for its time, Tim Burton actually did focus on like what kind of corruption is happening in Gotham that would allow for a Joker to come in and take over.
right.
I do think that both movies do that, but obviously because this Batman movie feels like an actual epic,
Yes.
you can kind of lean into more aspects of Gotham. But I do feel like for Batman '89, they got to the important stuff of what was wrong with Gotham.
Right. Yeah. To me, this one, you really see the corruption infiltrate every single
Mhm.
layer of it, right? Versus
Mhm.
that one, it's the '89 one, and of course we're talking about evolution of storytelling. We're talking
Yes.
about where everything built off. So it's very, you're right. Like Burton did a good job of establishing that, but I felt like the focus was more around set design, because that's Burton's thing is very aesthetic, right? Versus this was very like, no, let's talk about the social stuff. Let's talk about the injustices, the dialogue between Rachel Dawes and Bruce in the car ride and all that kind of stuff. Really talking about the social injustices in the society and all that kind of stuff. And the Tale of Two Cities kind of narrative that comes up throughout the whole Nolan verse of Batman is just like social distribution of wealth and all this kind of stuff. He sets the groundwork really, really well here and draws so many more parallels to our current reality that are less conflated and less comic booky and very, very much like this is. And Nolan does this such a good job, and that was part of his pitch, right? He was all along the lines is like, we want to see a Batman that would exist in this day and age and the reality of it, as opposed to the grandeur of comic bookness and the pageantry, and still provides that, but with like very good reasons of like, okay, Batman's jumping around, ziplining, and all this kind of stuff, but he's got the gadgetry to do it, and he goes through that whole Lucius Fox like building that scene up, building that Batman up with.
I
Lucius
really
Fox.
like Lucius Fox and Bruce Wayne's chemistry, and I also really like Bruce Wayne and Alfred's chemistry.
Correct.
And it just made me be like, yeah, that's another reason I didn't like Dark Knight Rises, was they basically spend the whole movie apart, him and Alfred, and I'm like, seems like such a shame to go out like that, because like they have such great chemistry together.
It really does.
I feel like those two actors bring, I mean, I'm not saying Christian Bale's a bad actor. I'm saying they bring something out of him that forces him to like be a bit more human than he is with the other characters he interacts with.
Yes.
I really like the way he interacts with those two, and I liked seeing that was really enforced in this first movie. That like these two father figures, and he treats them differently. Like maybe Lucius is his like cool uncle, but these are definitely people he looks up to.
Yes.
And needs for guidance. And I like that it really feels like he's trying, like he's doing his little dance of like, but I'm still in charge, but also like, but you know,
Mhm.
we all know like you're the person I need right now. You're my rock.
Yeah.
I really like that stuff. I think that yeah, I do think they did a good job of setting up the injustice, but I don't like the movie isn't that interested in it. I don't think. I think because the whole point is like the fear stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, and intimidation and
Mhm.
what like a lot of what Bruce Wayne goes through in the early part of the movie is like you're afraid of something, but we don't know what it is yet, and like it's all this fear driven stuff, and even when he's talking to Carmine Falcone, it's like he's like, you think you're not afraid, but you should really be thinking this through. And like,
Yeah.
he's like, I'm someone that's not afraid of anything because I'm sitting here in front of a judge, some cops, and I'm going to shoot you. And I know that nothing bad can happen to me. He's like, that's what's important in life is like that kind of power. And it's kind of what Dr. Crane is dealing with as well as that up until Batman puts the gas on himself. He walks around feeling confident in himself because
Yep.
he knows he can cause people to fear something and it will never come back to him.
Mhm.
And I feel like that is because especially when you said Tale of Two Cities, I feel like that was specifically something Christopher Nolan talked about for Dark Knight Rises. That
Yes.
was what brought him back to it. And that movie is concerned with the haves and the have-nots.
Yes. But it's what I'm saying, and it's hard not to jump forward and think of those thoughts because of the fact that this obviously trilogy being so
it's
well
a
done,
really well done trilogy, yeah.
except for the final chapter, obviously. But it's,
I don't like it, but I think that this movie sets up that third movie. That third
Correct.
movie is, in terms of a trilogy, that didn't like spin off and do something else.
Exactly.
That was the conclusion to this story they were telling.
Yeah,
I just didn't like it.
Yeah, it tied off a lot of what they set the stage for here,
Mhm.
and arguably don't really address again in the second one because that it wasn't interested in that. It was interested in anarchy, chaos, and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that second one was about escalation, which is set up
Yes.
in this. He's like,
Yes,
okay,
it's
you did this. You
Exactly.
did this, but now look what's happening now that you've done that. And the second movie, again, I don't think this is a flawed trilogy. I think
Mhm.
this first movie sets up the second movie, and then the third movie finishes off some of the loose ends of the first movie.
Yeah. No, it's not flawed whatsoever, and it's fantastic. It's wonderful because it sets that stage up. It's like, okay, we're dealing with this. We're dealing with this. This Batman is coming out of necessity for these things and all that kind of stuff, and it's absolutely wonderful the way he uses fear to like fear being the central element of this, how it can be used as a tool in many, many different ways, right?
Well, yeah, like just the idea that he's like, I'm afraid of bats, so I'm gonna use that to like make criminals afraid as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about this movie is, yes, he wanted it to be realistic, but like and we haven't seen the Matt Reeves movie, so I'm not gonna talk about it, but like my fear for that one is like they're really trying to make it realistic, whereas everything in this Nolan trilogy, yes, you can be like, it looks like they're really in Chicago or they're really in New York, but there still is a heightened sense of things because they are all the way throughout. They're giving you these moments straight out of the comics, or they're giving you the Nolan version of it that still requires a bit of heightened stuff. Like he wouldn't really be able to zip around the city the way he does in this movie.
Yes.
I mean, they give you an explanation for it, and that's fine. But like, it is still like what I like about Batman, that he's doing something that not just anyone can do. Yes, he's got money, but like, you could give that money. I mean, Bill Gates has money. He wouldn't be able to do what Bruce Wayne can do.
Correct.
I do think that there's like an element of like acknowledging that Bruce Wayne is an exceptional person, like in that way, that he is driven. And yes, if he didn't have as much money, he wouldn't be able to be Batman. But it's not just the money that's the superpower, like the Ben Affleck. I know he's joking, but like, that's not the money isn't his superpower. The money is what allows him to use his power.
I would say his superpower here, and of course we can't say super because a lot of people get really upset the fact that he doesn't technically have superpower.
No, he does not have superpowers.
It's
That's correct.
an inhuman power of willpower. His drive, his determination. That's the thing, and it's you see that in every step. Like throughout this whole thing, and this is what I didn't realize rewatching it with this lens of like, let's re-examine these movies, is how much Batman struggles. Because we like to think of Batman as a person that's just constantly like getting it, winning it, has contingency plans for everything, single thing. But here, he does a lot of growing throughout his whole thing, like the whole idea, like, oh, he's going to confront Gordon and tell him he's on his side, and he has
Mhm.
to do the jumping thing, and now he's like, okay, I got to figure that out. What's the technology? Like, can I do that safer so I don't get bruised up? Like the utility belt. It's like, okay, I don't need the top part of this harness anymore. Like, he's doing all those things that are really, really cool. That you're like, I really love seeing that evolution of a character to become that final Batman in the end, where he's like, no, now at the end of the movie, you're doing what we expect Batman to be doing. You're fighting things, you've got contingency plans, you've got all this kind of stuff. Like, here's an antidote for Gordon. You've got all this crazy stuff that Batman's the end of it. It's awesome.
Mhm.
Versus like the Tim Burton one, you're just dropped into a world where Batman is already who he is. You don't grow with him at all. So I feel like this movie is much more successful in getting.
But I wanted to bring that up. There's still a lot of stuff that
There is a lot, but I feel like this
Christopher Nolan like took from the Tim Burton. Like, even that antidote you talked about, that is something that they talk about in the movie, that he's like trying to figure out the antidote to the Joker toxin, or even that he takes his love interest back to the cave and then is like, and now I'm gonna sedate you and you're gonna wake up in the morning and you've got to go to the cops and tell them. Like, it's like just straight up beat for beat stuff that he's taken from him. So I don't know that I would do too much, versus what Tim Burton, because what's obvious in this movie to me and for the trilogy is whether or not he wants to say it. He loves the way Richard Donner approaches movies, but he's also heavily leaning on the Tim Burton stuff for what he's pulling from to create scenes and storylines.
So that's what I meant. That's where the thought was going. It's a great idea to see the Donner Superman stuff combined with the Tim Burton Batman stuff, and then this is the result that we get with so many more like very, very intellectual topics that start off here that can get continued throughout the whole trilogy. It's a fascinating movie. It's fantastic. So watching all those things to watch Bruce grow, like, that's how really I got more attached to this Bruce than I did with the Tim Burton one.
I mean, I don't know that they're really that interested in Bruce Wayne in those movies. Again, as I said, the only one that seems interested in Bruce Wayne versus Batman is Batman Forever, and everyone likes to make fun of that one.
Yes,
but it is, again, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know that like there's much merit in like going back and forth with those ones, because for me, I'm never like, oh, that was a great like pencil crayon drawing. I wish it was an oil painting. Like, it's like they chose their medium and they went for it. So like the Tim Burton movies is like, yeah, we've already set it up. Like, we said it when we watched them. They don't care about like character development for Batman. He is who he is. He's a known quantity.
Yep.
And now you're watching him interact with these different situations. So knowing that, I'm not going to be like, well, they don't have character development. It's like, yeah, that's we watched that for 2 movies. That's not what they're interested in doing. And for this one, it's like, this is so focused on Bruce Wayne in particular and what his mission is and what Batman means to him in terms of how he's going to accomplish this mission. And that's what the 3 movies are. So yeah, I think that's what separates it, other than like the stuff that he kind of cherry picks from the other movies that he liked. But I do like to focus on like just what Christopher Nolan was trying to do, because that seems to be the most fruitful conversation. Is like,
it is definitely the most fruitful conversation.
It's like, okay, like, let's really lean into how I know that everyone says, oh, he didn't even want to do the 3rd movie, but like, even so, like, and again, I don't like that movie. Like, it really goes against what I like about Batman, but I can't say that 3rd movie wasn't set up already by the other 2 movies. Like, he says in this movie, this is a temporary thing. I just need this to like create the symbol that's going to inspire people. And that's exactly what happens in Dark Knight Rises. Like, it feels like a thought out trilogy in that way of like, and I'm not going to compare it to other trilogies. It's just like, I feel like what Christopher Nolan's strength is with these three movies and this very strong first movie is that something is set up and they actually pay it off and they actually see it through. Yes, I mean, I wouldn't have liked it, but yes, maybe he was going to put Joker in the third movie, but like he still was able to like follow through on what I feel like set up for Bruce Wayne in these movies.
Yeah. I think one of the outlining things of the Nolan movie in Batman Begins that you don't really that is kind of cool to me is a lot of the focus on the Thomas Wayne Bruce Wayne relationship.
Yeah.
That is part I like very, very much. Where but the idea that this is one of those things that always was because of course I lost my parents and all that kind of stuff, and that's how I relate to Batman. Well, I lost my dad, and that's how I relate to Batman and all that kind of stuff. But the idea that relationship, rewatching it didn't seem a very, very loving or intimate relationship, which is kind of like what one would expect when you look at high society and privilege and stuff like that. I don't know if I'm being accurate with that.
Wait, what?
Like, you know what I mean? Like this father was very, very weird in the way it was played to me, in the sense where it's like, okay, he was very, very supportive of Bruce, did all those things, taught Bruce, mentored him and all that kind of stuff. But then the traditional like happy father stuff, I don't know if that was purposely like we didn't want to show that part of it. But
I completely disagree with you. I think this is my favorite version of Thomas Wayne. Like he's so support. Like I don't know what you mean. I don't know what. Like I'm just like I think
more of a stereotypic like a father son playing a game of catch together.
But why would that ever happen with someone who's living in a mansion?
Well, that's I don't know. Like that, I don't know. I'm just fleshing out ideas.
I don't like. That's what I'm saying. I don't get what you mean. Like you're thinking of the suburbs, like the white picket fence, which isn't high society even a little bit. So what I'm saying is, every other way they show Bruce Wayne of like he's like in the shadow of this like titan named Thomas Wayne, and you never really see any connection with them. I think this movie does a good job of being like, no, there is a direct line. Like he has his father's hold on,
what just happened?
You still there? Okay, yeah. He has his father's ear the whole time. Like it's his father is so in tune with him that he notices when he's uncomfortable at the opera and is like, let's get out of here. And he's not like, oh, Bruce ruined it for me. He's like, no, I'm tired, I want to get out of here. So I really don't know what you mean, because I'm feeling like I feel like he is so in tune with his son, and it goes against what normally you would see for the I guess even if you think about the Joker, I had a problem with how they portrayed Thomas Wayne or even Alfred, but that seems closer to like what we accept in general as like the rich, like living in a mansion raised by your butler as opposed to your parents.
Right. And I guess that's where my disconnect is, where high society is like that. That's a very common situation where you would have someone raise your kids for you kind of deal. Whereas like, so I was just like not really understanding. Obviously, I didn't word that properly, but this is one of those things where I was the thought I'm trying to get across was I was thinking or expecting somewhat in my mind, because I know that this is the best representation of a supportive relationship between Bruce and Thomas. That this is the best one, but I always thought, based on all my kind of things, was that Bruce missed the very, very part of like there was a loving part, a very, very kind-hearted, like less serious, basically less serious, because like everything that Thomas does is very supportive. You're absolutely right. He does all those things. He mentors, teaches, like all those different things. He doesn't judge. Does all those things, but it's a relationship that seems very serious to me. And that
I just don't agree. I just don't agree. I mean, I don't know what you saw that like made it feel that serious. Like it seemed like just seemed like a father-son relationship more so than other representations. I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't see what you're seeing. I saw like that in contrast to his mother, who I don't even think has a line. They really made Thomas Wayne this really nice person. Like even when he's being mugged and like he's gonna die. Like I remember like the first couple of times I watched it, I was like, he might get out of this. Like he's like the way when the mugger Joe Chill drops the wallet, and he's like, it's okay, pick it up. I just think he's a very attentive and kind person throughout the movie, like whatever time he has on it. Even the idea that like that image of him descending down and he's the one that picks Bruce out of the pit, like I don't really see room for this to feel like a stiff relationship. It seems very loving and in tune with just the way he is with other people throughout the movie. I mean, again, he's only limited to like 3 or 4 interactions with people, but it never feels like he's this guy that's like closed off. He seems very open and with the people he's interacting with.
That is fair. I guess what I was hoping for was something stereotypical like that ball throwing thing, and that's just because like I understand that as a big thing for a lot of people, right?
But I think that fundamentally changes
when you put the class element in.
No, I'm saying like that whole like for me, this is what I didn't like about Joker is that they made Bruce's parent, and when I say parents, I mean Alfred and Thomas Wayne. They made them assholes. Like they made them like people that like he's old enough to remember what kind of asshole his dad is being, or to remember that interaction Alfred had with Joker at the like gate. And I'm like, well, then why would he grow up into a benevolent person? That would change him into someone who's like, well, yeah, get rid of that shit over there, that garbage or whatever. Like,
you're talking about the Joker in Joker.
In Joker, that doesn't make me feel like Bruce Wayne's gonna like evolve into this person that cares about the good of humanity. This representation of Thomas Wayne, like the idea that he's like, even the idea that he's like, yeah, my name is on the tower, but I let more interested people take it. Like that sets you up to be like, okay, that's why he can have a Lucius Fox and a Alfred helping him out, because he understands that you can't do this kind of stuff alone. And that whole why do we fall so we can get back up, and just in general, his grace, he is being rough, but that's the give and pull there, is that like he is trying to be his dad, but he's got so much rage and fear that he's teetering off into the other stuff. But like when it becomes just this relationship of like father son, I don't know that gives you the edge you need for him. I think it is like the loss of the person who has instilled good things in him, but also is still that legendary Titan Thomas Wayne.
Yeah. Because when the scene where Ducard, Raz, Liam Neeson, and Batman are training on the ice, and after Batman falls in and he talks about his past love and how he connects with Bruce in that regard, how like, it's if you miss someone, you turn that into anger, so much so that your anger becomes towards yourself, hating the fact that you remember them in the first place and all that kind of stuff. Like that was like a scene that has always like stood out to me as like one of the best things ever, because I'm like, that is so true in regards to losing a parent like that, and at such a young pivotal age where you're like, I wish you had been able to help me grow up into something before you were able, like you kind of have those irrational thoughts of like, why weren't you there to protect me and all those kind of things, but you're like, well, you understand why. But it's that discussion to me was like, it really hit home for me, and it really was very, very smart for to humanize both Liam Neeson's character in that regard, and like to have that connection with it, and that parallel that they're running of like the League of Shadows. Here's the means to fight injustice. Here's all these kind of things, but then fundamentally at the end of the day, Batman was like, no. The compassion's the only thing that separates us, and
which I feel like he learned from his dad, like through all those interactions we're talking about.
Absolutely, and
the compassion when he's like, he can see that his dad is being mugged and he's still trying to talk this person through it and like make sure that they get out of this alive or anything. Like that's what I mean. Like I feel like they use his small amount of time so effectively in terms of like me being like, this is where Bruce would get his values from.
So that's fair. So I guess my comments were more projection on my own thoughts and issues.
And that's fair. I mean, as I said, I don't think you're wrong. Like, if you felt there was something missing, I'm not like, no, there wasn't. No, there was. I'm just saying, like, I don't see like what they should have done differently. Like, and if you like, sure, there's a catch scene, but I feel like what I wanted to get away from was that he had some kind of like distant relationship with his father, which I don't think you were completely saying, but I didn't want it to come off that way. No, that's not
what I was saying. Yeah, it was one of those things where it felt close, but still felt a little far because of the seriousness of everything. But at the same time, too, I will say that if there was a scene like I'm saying that they're playing catch and they're laughing at the dinner table or anything like that, that would really, really mess up with the pace of what's going on in that first act too.
That, and I don't see that as being a function of like what that type of person would do.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's just a stereotype like trope that I have in my head is like, oh, well, we're a happy family, we're throwing a ball at the outside or at a barbecue or something like that, like that's, or on a road trip or something like. But you're right, you're absolutely right. Those are things that high society and privilege like that, old money like that, probably wouldn't be doing. Like they'd probably be doing something very. I don't know how that.
I can't say they wouldn't. I'm saying like if we're talking about cinematic language, that wouldn't read as these are the Waynes, they're old money. That would read as, oh yeah, like they do pretty well. They're like, it's Joe Schmo in their white picket fence house in the suburbs. So that's all I meant was cinematically, I don't think that reads the way it needs to read for what they're setting up.
Fair enough. But I will agree, though, this Thomas Wayne is probably the best Thomas Wayne out there, because every other Thomas Wayne I see, I'm just like, why do you hold this person in such high regard? It's just like, that doesn't seem like a person that was very compassionate. And the Joker Thomas Wayne was the best example of that, right?
I really didn't like it.
It was like titan of industry. He was like an asshole that was like, no, this is a pure businessman that's like cutthroat and all that kind of stuff. So why did Bruce respect that, look up to that? And you're absolutely right with the Alfred interaction with the Joker and what Bruce sees. You're just like, well, what the hell? That's how you're treating people and all that kind of stuff. It's really weird. You're right, in that Joker universe, how Batman grows up to be who he's supposed to be. This one, you see that in a much better light.
And again, the Joker movie is just concerned with the Joker. I just felt like, as I said when we reviewed it, so I'm not going to get into it any further, that movie suffers from trying to incorporate the Batman stuff. I just feel like, all right, like we're doing this and it's such a well-known character that like, if you're really telling me this guy is going to create Batman, I don't see Batman turning out the way anyone would ever recognize him with this universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right that the Joker movie does suffer from trying to shoe in the Batman stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, so getting back to this one, I think the other thing I really like about this was that they changed Alfred's role in this, because I've always had a problem with the way Alfred was depicted as like this butler that was also a CIA, like Secret Service kind of thing that had all these crazy stories. But then
that's only new stuff.
It is new stuff. I've always had a problem with that. I like
that's not historically what happens.
You're absolutely right, but I don't like the fact that they do that kind of stuff. Versus here, where I like what he's like, basically the caretaker of the mansion.
But he is, I mean, you
awesome.
Say that, but he is like a secret agent in this too. Because remember, in Dark Knight, he's telling stories of how they had to like hunt down like warlords.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So, but yeah. Yeah,
that's right. Everything in Dark Knight Rises.
No, that's Dark Knight.
Yeah, Dark. Oh yeah, just to watch the world burn. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I mean, that stuff never bothers me because I don't really like. You need to like explain why he would be so down and capable of supporting Bruce Wayne. So if that's the backstory they want to give him, I feel like that's better than he was an actor and he knows how to hide blemishes with makeup.
That's fair.
I like. He at least has some insight into like tactical stuff and like can be there and saying stuff. But that stuff doesn't matter. I just like Michael Caine as Alfred, and I like Michael Gough as Alfred. I've never really had a problem with other than the Gotham Alfred, I just felt like he doesn't feel like a butler even a little bit
Yeah,
in Gotham, but
but that show is rife
that
with.
show's doing whatever it wants to do. I'm not,
Yeah,
it's whatever.
it's
But like,
not concerned with
but
anything.
like in terms of like Batman animated series, even the Adam West Batman, like I've always been like, yeah, okay, it's Alfred. I get it. I like that's fine. I like it. I just thought that this one again, and it is because of the relationship he has with Bruce in this, that he, like, you really do believe he cares, and like it pays off again in Dark Knight Rises when they do have to split ways. That works because you have watched him legitimately be like, I care about you so much, like please don't throw your life away. Like in this movie and in the second movie, how worried he is when he has to stitch him up and stuff. Like, so yeah, that third movie when they split ways, like I wish they didn't split ways for the whole movie. Like they literally don't ever interact with each other again. And I just mean, like, I know they raise glasses to each other, but like there's no more like of them talking to each other for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
But it is a powerful moment in that movie because the first two movies really set up their relationship and you love seeing them together.
Yeah.
And what's going on inside of him while he's trying to help this son figure be the best person he can be. Like in this movie, he is scolding him. He's like, you said this wasn't about thrill seeking. Look at this footage on the thing. In the second movie, he's like, oh, man, I'm gonna burn this letter from Rachel because this is gonna kill him. Like I don't.
Yeah, that's
and,
rough.
And then in the third movie, he's like, all right, fuck this. You don't know what you're doing. You're not prepared. You're not like good to go. Like I can't watch this anymore. But like I really like this Alfred. And again, I'm so happy they chose to use Lucius Fox in these movies because I remember him being like in like 5 episodes of the animated series, and he was not as attached to Batman as he is in this. I just think it's such a great character. Like that moment again where he's just like, listen, you don't want to tell me what you're doing. I don't have to lie when someone asks me. I'm not an idiot. So like, shut up.
I love that so much. I love it so much. It's like, listen, dude, you own this already. This is all yours. There's a code here, but just don't pretend like I'm an idiot. I love that so much. That boundary that he set up was so good.
He's like, yeah, I know you're gonna do some vigilante stuff, but like, it's like I'm not like he's like, you're expecting a lot of like knife fights and you're spelunking.
Yeah, that was fun. And I like that relationship a lot that he has with Lucius Fox. That's a lot of fun.
And as I said, this is the only other than the animated series, this is the only Commissioner Gordon I respect.
Yes.
Even when they got J.K. Simmons for Justice League, I was like, nope, that didn't work. Nope.
Well, I would have liked to see more of it, but
still didn't work for me. Like I get it, but like they made, again, this movie is so, and you can't do that in a Justice League movie, but this movie was so concerned with like developing these people who are going to be throughout this trilogy. Like, again, that's why I'm saying, like, I really like this as a trilogy. It really works because they're setting up characters and it's not just a one-off thing. It's like, here is another father figure in Commissioner Gordon. I mean, this one, they're more like tentative allies.
Yeah, and I love the fact that they're growing together, like their careers are growing together.
Yeah. But I do think that he ends up like, well, he says in Dark Knight Rises, you are my hero. Because again, that's another thing that's set up in this movie, but really explored in the second movie, is like, I wish I could do this without being Batman. I wish I could just affect change and do it legally, but this city is so fucked, I can't do it.
Yeah, the idea that
he's like, Commissioner Gordon can affect change and he's doing it legally. Like, that's my hero. In addition to being the only nice person when his parents died, and like not just being like, hey, good news, we caught the guy who killed it. It's like, well, did you bring my parents back? Because I don't really give a fuck that you caught the guy. It's like, but Commissioner Gordon in that moment like puts the blanket on him and is like treating him correctly. Like, he is like trying to be there for him emotionally. So there's many reasons why Commissioner Gordon is his hero, but like, I mean, I don't really like any of his lines in this movie. Like, he doesn't have the whole, like, you know what? This time I saved him. Like, that is my favorite Commissioner Gordon moment in Dark Knight, where he's like, no, this time I saved Batman.
Yeah,
Like,
and
I
like
really
Commissioner
like him
Gordon
in
moments
this
in
movie.
Dark Knight. Yeah,
Hmm?
yeah, I like him a lot in this movie because you see him do a lot more things that are a lot better than in the third one where they kind of make him
Well,
fumble.
yeah, his again, I don't like the third movie. I just like that it tracks it, like for the big themes. There's character stuff that gets lost for almost everybody, but the beats that work have all been set up and paid off properly.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I liked a lot about Jim Gordon in this one and the role that he plays and the person that he communicates who he is that one thing where he gets in the car with his partner Flass and he knows all the things that Flass is going to do, and then Flass is having that kind of peer pressure conversation with him, like, hey, when you don't dip into the pot, it makes the rest of us nervous, and he just shoots back. He's like, I'm not a cop, but I'm not gonna I'm not getting my hands dirty too. No, I'm not a rat. Like, I will never rat on you guys. I will never like do this. I'm still part of the team, but I'm not gonna do what you guys do. Like, that really set him apart, and in this, and I really loved that one dialogue that he had. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
I guess this brings us to Rachel, and I feel like I never noticed it before when I was younger, but yeah,
Yep.
Christopher Nolan kind of sucks with female characters.
Yeah, he does.
One, Martha doesn't speak at all,
Correct.
which is weird considering she's pretty much on screen maybe like 60% of the time that Thomas is, but never gets to talk. Or does she talk when they leave the opera?
I think there's a scream.
No, I feel like she might say something when they get out of the opera, because isn't that what prompts Thomas to be like, oh, it's my fault?
Oh, yeah, so something like, what's wrong, Bruce?
Yeah.
But I mean, like, that's...
But she doesn't say anything of value. I mean, and I'm not trying to shit on the actress. This is purely a Christopher Nolan issue of not knowing how to, other than I feel like both times Anne Hathaway has worked with him, she comes off. I know people like to hate on her in Interstellar, but I feel like that's more a function of people liking to hate on Anne Hathaway. But I feel like she's great as Catwoman, and she's, from what I remember, not horrible in Interstellar, a movie that I've only seen once. So
I've only seen once because it's just the audio mixing is too much.
Yeah, I also was like, if I'm not watching this in a theater again, I can't imagine watching this again.
Yeah, that movie has very little rewatchability to me.
But yeah, anyway, my point is, I think she's the only person that has come off as like doing well. Because I remember thinking like, oh, I just don't like that. What is her name? Is her name? Katie Holmes. No, Katie. No, this time I'm talking about the actor in particular. Like, I was just like, I just don't like Katie Holmes as Rachel. But then an actor I really like, Maggie Gyllenhaal, plays her, and I'm like, yeah, I still hate her. It's the character. There's nothing you can do about it. I do not like this character. It's like I don't like the character because they're like, oh, Bruce loves her so much. I'm like, why? Because like they used to hang out when they were 5. Like, nothing she does is ever something that makes me be like, and that's the person I would like pine after for my whole life.
Yeah.
Like, at a certain point when you just be like, all right, yeah, you don't like me, obviously. Like, she's giving him shit all the time. And I think that comes down to the actor at that point of like, you could play this like you want better for him, but I always just take it as she's shitting on him. I never like it's not like she's not saying good points, but just the delivery, I'm just like, I just feel like you don't like him. Like, I feel like you're like,
I'm disappointed in you. And this time rewatching this movie, it made me question why they're friends in the first place. You know what I mean? Because like,
I get that the childhood thing, and if he, it seems like he's the one that's like pushing the friendship because, again, if you're off in the Palisades, it's not like you're hanging out with a bunch of kids. So if the one kid you were able to see on a consistent basis is around, then maybe you would push that relationship. But I feel like both Batman Begins and Dark Knight are trying to say that she also really likes him, and I'm like, does she, or did she just grow up with him and she's like, yeah, I get it, it's Bruce, I get it.
Well, yeah, like the Dark Knight really makes it very clear that she's made her choice in Harvey Dent, right?
She's made her choice because she's like, well, I'm not down to like be with someone who's Batman, but it also does make it seem like she's tempted because of this passion they have for each other that I don't ever feel like is properly displayed.
I agree. I don't think the romantic angle to me really isn't there. I feel like I think he idolizes her because of the fact that she called him out on his bullshit a lot. And I don't think there's many people in his life that will. And I think that made her
No,
stand
I
out.
disagree because
Really.
both Lucius Fox and Alfred call him out on his shit all the time.
Right. But from a romantic standpoint, I mean,
I mean, I don't know, man.
like
I
unless
th-
it came
I
out as
don't.
gay, which is completely fine. I
What
wouldn't
you're doing is
still
try
think that.
to meet the movie more than halfway. I don't
That's fair.
know that like I don't know that like because one, I don't know that he idolizes her. I know that there is like this. At best, it's a longing for times to be like they were before he had to be Batman, and
Right.
like this element of like she is a part of when I was happy.
Mm.
So there's that. But for it to be like a thing where like, and don't get me wrong, yeah, you lose a best friend, you might take some time off. But like for him to be like, well, Rachel's dead, I'm done with Batman. It
Yep.
like that has to be more than just he lost a friend. That has to be like that was like what you were working. For me, it feels like that's what you were working towards, which is part of Dark Knight. Is like if I can stop being Batman, she's gonna love me and we're gonna be together forever. Like, again, not stuff I like, but it is set up that like he starts this off as I'm going to be the symbol. It always will be temporary, but I'm going to be the symbol that inspires people to do better. And then when he bumps up against Rachel and she's like, well, as long as you're doing this, I'm not really into it. Then it turns into like, yeah, the inspiration stuff, but also like I need to get this done quickly so that I can get to Rachel.
Yep.
And I'm like, I just don't know that she ever acts in a way that makes me feel like, yeah, that's what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't ever think she likes him. I'm always like, that's her friend from back in the day.
Yep.
And you obviously care. You were there when his parents died. So I'm not saying she doesn't care about him. I'm just saying like I don't think she's like romantically interested in him.
Do you,
But the movies are trying to make it seem like she is. It's trying to make it feel like they're. It's trying to make it seem like if he wasn't Batman, they would be together. And I'm like, I don't know that that's true. I
don't get that sense either.
She doesn't. I feel like she fundamentally does not respect his choices.
I agree with you on that. I feel like she finally changes her opinion of him when he reveals himself as Batman. Like, this is what I'm doing and all this kind of stuff. She sees him in a different light, but I don't think that's love. I think that's just respect.
Yeah, she's like, oh, okay, good. You are doing something.
Exactly.
You're not just wasting your time. Yeah, good.
And then the final dialogue where she's like, no, this mask. And I'm like, yeah, that's the mask you're actually putting on. You're absolutely right to say that. And you're right to say it. But then immediately afterwards they're holding hands and like, where the hell did that
kiss
come from?
And yeah. I'm like,
where?
And this is my issue. Like I'm really hung up on like, I'm just like, because the movie is from the point of view of Bruce Wayne, I'm forced to be like, I just don't get what he gets out of his relationship with Rachel. Yep. In every movie she's in, she's just constantly shitting on him.
Mm-hmm. And I was trying to like play devil's advocate in the idea of like, oh, maybe he likes the fact that she grounds him and all that kind of stuff. She makes him feel like a real person and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to this millionaire playboy that everyone else expects to see. Like that is a thing that could potentially be,
she never does it with like love. Like she doesn't
exactly.
And I don't mean romantic love, but she doesn't do anything with love. It's just this like stone-faced like you're swimming, like some of us have better things to do, or like, oh yeah, I'm not going to your birthday, Bruce, like I have stuff to do, I have a job, like I'm not going to celebrate your birthday. Here's an arrowhead you gave me like 20 years ago. It's like, okay, like that's what you're chasing. Like it's weird that is what he is actively pursuing.
Yeah,
I'm not someone that thinks that Batman needs a love interest. Like I get that like he's got a bigger thing, but these two move, and just by byproduct, the third movie as well. Like all three movies are based around the absence of Rachel and like how much he in the beginning wants to impress her, and then in the second one wants to prove her wrong, and so they can be together, and then him coming back from losing her. And I'm just like, I feel like the Rachel stuff should have ended in Dark Knight. That should have just been like a thing where yes, he takes the time to like be like, all right, like I lost someone I really care about, this sucks, feel that, and then I don't want Dark Knight Rises to start with him like not being Batman for 8 years and being like,
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, to me, the Rachel Dawes stuff falls apart because I don't see it as a love that's reciprocated. I see it
No, it's
as
not. Yeah.
Batman's infatuation with Rachel because Rachel represents a point in his life where before all this shit happened, right? Where
Mhm.
he was a kid, where he was normal, where he had his family, and he was able to run around Wayne Manor and without a care in the world and have all those things that he misses. I feel like his infatuation with her is just because she resembles that period of his life, as opposed to, and that became romantic through from his perspective, and that her respect for him created some sort of like, there's an affinity but not a romantic kind of connection.
Yeah,
So to me,
yes, I agree with you 100%.
yeah, it's so it to me it's a very 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 confusing relationship that they have, but it was simplified into a love story, which I don't necessarily agree with. I 100% agree with you in regards that this is probably the weakest beat of the whole movie, is that forced
And it has
romance.
so much effect on the rest of the movies.
Exactly, it changes the whole trilogy.
Because
If
what I feel like works is the relationship with Batman. And I'm not saying in Dark Knight Rises. I'm just saying in the comics that Batman Catwoman stuff really works for me. Like that is the only time where I'm like, yeah, like I like that they play with could they be together, could they not be together,
Yep.
because that is like they are these two broken people that like find each other, and then they're like, well, we're on the opposite side of the law here.
Mhm. But I think the reason why I like it in the comic books too is like because Bruce recognizes that Batman has fallen in love with Catwoman and that there's no real relationship once they take off the masks, or that they don't know if there's a relationship once they take off the masks. So that
It's not like that in the comics anymore. They
Oh,
are
no?
like they are deeply in love as
Oh, gotcha.
Bruce, as Selena, as Batman, as Catwoman.
Oh, I see.
It's
Cool.
just that she's not gonna just become like
Straight.
Batman because she loves him. It's that, and I think that's way more engaging. Is that
Oh, yeah.
they identify on multiple levels,
Mm.
and there is like a give and take with them, as
Mhm.
opposed to this Rachel thing where you're kind of like, yeah, I get, like, I understand. It's what we've already said 3 times now. Like, it reminds him of a time where things were better.
Yeah.
But like, where it falls apart, as you said, is that she kind of like kisses him back
Yeah.
in both movies, and I'm like, but like, it doesn't seem like she likes him that way. It just seems weird that she's going along with, like, I mean, again, comes down to Christopher Nolan writing women, is that like I'm forced to be like she's going along with it, as opposed to like this is something she wants as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
you're right. It's like in Dark Knight, it's like I'm with Harvey Dent.
Yep.
And that's that. And I
I
said
love
yes
Harvey.
to his marriage. I wrote you a letter being like, I'm done with this.
She chooses her last seconds alive to say like, hey, Harvey, like you and I can communicate right now. I choose you. Like it's you that I want and all that kind of stuff. She like every single thing about her. So the question ultimately becomes the continuation of the Rachel Dawes character, obviously the flipping of the actresses between this is one thing that is much like I like Maggie Gyllenhaal much better. She does much more with the character and all that kind of stuff.
That's the thing. I don't think she does.
Really?
No,
I just think that she brings an acting dimension to it that Katie Holmes didn't.
This rewatch, I was like, I don't even think Katie Holmes is doing a bad job. I just think it's a terrible character.
Right.
Because like, again, like I can't point to like something that where I'm like, wow, Maggie Gyllenhaal really elevated that line.
I think it's a bit unfair too, because like when I'm objectively analyzing the Rachel Dawes character, she does do a lot of stuff in the DA. She does a lot of stuff fearlessly and all that kind of stuff. She's able to protect herself. That one scene in the subway where she gets her taser gun out. She's able, like like on paper, she's a strong character. On paper.
Yeah, but what undoes her is being like, and then she kisses Batman. I think that is where it all falls apart. Because as much as I can be kind of like, have some hangups as a man and be like, why is she always giving him shit? I can also acknowledge that what she's saying is right from her point of view. Like she never says anything wrong. It's just if that for that character, like make that function of that character then, that she
Yep.
is anti, because in sometimes it's like I can't remember, I think it's Gwen Stacy, she is anti Spider-Man, pro Peter Parker.
Yes.
But this movie is just like, no, she's anti like
Mm.
Bruce Wayne, and I don't even like, it seems like she respects Batman, but then she's kind of like, yeah, but I can't get down with all this Batman stuff. So it just seems like she's anti both.
Because and that's the one thing that's just like, wait, you respect Batman now? Like, aren't
Well,
you
no,
a
she
dating
respects the, as we established. I think
Yeah.
she respects that her friend that she thought was just throwing away his life is doing something. But I think the more she sits with it, she's like, but I don't like that either. Like, I don't like it. She's just, it's more the respect for that he's trying. I don't know if it's a respect for Batman as a entity.
I agree with that because the idea like, oh, I respect you for doing something positive, and then the moment she gets to pause and reflect about it, but wait, you're a vigilante, you're taking the law into your own hands, and as Bruce Wayne, you can donate to a lot of different things, which is what
I think it's also just being like, you're being violent and like,
Yeah.
weird. Like, it's that disagreement they had in the car when he was like, well, I'm just gonna shoot the guy, and she
Yep.
smacks him, and she's like, your dad would be embarrassed or like ashamed, and it's like, I just think it's ill-defined how she feels about Batman, because maybe I'll rewatch Dark Knight and be like, oh, she does like Batman, I guess. But like,
Yeah.
I get the sense by her ending on, I'm not gonna be with you as long as you're Batman, that she's also anti-Batman. And that saying is weird because it doesn't even really seem like she likes Bruce Wayne that way.
Mhm.
So anyway, well, I guess we should move on from that because we haven't talked about Jonathan Crane or Falcone all that much.
Yeah, and oh my god, what a great villain.
I'm more a fan of the Falcone character. I just find, like, I love that monologue he has where he's like, you're always going to fear the things you don't understand. Like, I think that's such a great moment. His accent has kind of like not aged well for me, as I used to be like, yeah, like I knew he was British because I remember him from Rush Hour, where I'm pretty sure he is British in that.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, he did such a great job in Batman Begins, and then now I'm watching, I'm like, I can see where people might poke fun at his accent, but like that's why you get like a Tom Wilson. It's like, no, that guy is acting like he's doing a great job in that role.
Yeah. Carmine Falcone, played by Tom Wilkinson, he does a really, really good job. That monologue, I absolutely love that monologue, because I think one of the biggest things in this movie that does very, very well, they establish the central theme as fear, and they establish so many different ways that fear and power are intertwined, and that scene in itself, where Carmine Falcone is basically, where Bruce is like, hey, I want to show you that not everyone's afraid. And then he's like, only the people that actually know me are afraid. And then he just sits him down and has a huge monologue. And then it's just an incredible monologue. It really is, because it's just like, it really communicates so many different things about what fear is and how power works, and how people can manipulate it at their will, just by threatening people and all that kind of stuff, which was something we all know. But having him launch into that monologue in front of Bruce, explaining it to Bruce, was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. Because like the idea where he's like, you haven't thought hard enough about this yet. You haven't thought about your friend in the DA's office. You haven't thought about your butler friend. You haven't thought about this. And he's like, you're just being selfish right now. You're acting on selfishness. You haven't thought about all those things, and it's awesome. It like that monologue was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I really like him in that movie. And yeah, Jonathan Crane, Cillian Murphy is good. I guess I like him is in that scene where he's like, oh, you want my advice, you need to lighten up, and like, because he actually is menacing in that moment, and like he's getting stuff done. But yeah, I mean, I guess because he shows up in all the movies, like it feels less. That was kind of my thing with people being like, oh, but Joker had to be in the third movie. I'm like, because of how movies work, it seems like less special if the villain is in all of them, unless it's unless it's like Ra's al Ghul, where there is this idea of like, this person is a part of the hero's growth, and like you're kind of playing like mentor turned antagonist, and maybe there's a place where you think, oh, maybe he can turn him back. But like with Joker, you're like, no, that is what worked about that portrayal of Joker. And I know people don't like to be like, oh, it should only be one way, but like what works in this world is that Joker isn't going to change. He is what he is. He's this force of nature.
Yep.
So bringing him back again, it's like, well, what are you gonna do with him this time? Like,
Yep.
he's
Yeah,
and that's what I felt about like Scarecrow. I'm like, he just got further and further away from what his potency in Batman Begins. And I get, yes, it's just to like because Christopher Nolan likes Cillian Murphy.
Yes.
But I was just like I my memory of him is as like the judge at the end of then I'm like, yeah, like he kind of just was like around. He didn't feel like a threat anymore. If he's able to just like be out and about like that, like he's obviously not that big of a threat.
But I like in this one where they set up different levels of threats, right? They set up different levels of threats where obviously he's in court, that one scene where he's defending Victor Zsasz and gets him into Arkham, and you see Zsasz again and all that kind of stuff. It sets the stage of like, here are the Batman villains and objectively where they would fit in a criminal organization. Zsasz as a butcher, like a soldier and all that kind of stuff was a really, really cool thought. It was really, really
I like seeing him, but I don't really, because of that, I don't see him as like this great villain. I'm just like, yeah, he's there and he's part of.
No, you're absolutely right. And he even says that to Falcone, right? He says like, I'm well aware that you're not threatened by me, but my boss is coming, kind of deal. Like he knows his role. He knows he's a tool in all this and all that kind of stuff. And even like Ra's al Ghul says like, he just thought we were holding the city for ransom and we are going to get a lot of money. He's like, he didn't realize we are going to do this. So it's like his role in this is very, very, very much through how he's used. Like, he's not a big threat. You're absolutely right. The only time he's scary is when he's like, oh, you need to lighten up, and like he's done that kind of thing.
And you get to see the effect that has on. It's not just like a moment, like a cool moment. It's like, nope, that put him out of commission for like 3 days, and even immediately after that, that guy thought he was dying, and like was like, he was not cool at all. He's like in the back of the car being like, poison, fear toxin.
It was crazy. It was just one of those things that you're right. He's not a big threat in this, but I don't think Scarecrow was ever supposed to be a big threat in this. It was just the idea.
But I'm saying like in general, you and that's kind of what I like about these movies. So like, it sounds like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth, but what I'm saying is, I think he's used well throughout the trilogy to be like, some like there will be multiple villains, like because everyone always is like, no, you can only have one villain. I'm like, you can have one main villain, sure, but you can have multiple villains in a movie and they can just serve different purposes. And this Scarecrow did exactly what he needed to do in that sense of being that piece of the puzzle for this movie.
Yeah, and I really, really like that because, of course, like I was saying before, like how Scarecrow and how Zsasz fit into the criminal organization, where there's the boss, which is obviously Falcone, and then you have the captains and the soldiers and all that kind of stuff, versus in the animated series and a lot of the other kind of media we consume, especially the video games, it's very much like, this is the Joker gang, he's the boss of his own gang, this is the Scarecrow gang, you have all those kind of things, versus this is like, oh, no, they fit within one organization, and that's crime.
But I do think that's another thing that's good about this is they're showing the deterioration of that.
Yes,
they're showing
even
that
like criminal breakdown.
That organization was just, and that's what, again, that's why I was saying I feel like all movies lead into each other. Is that there was a hierarchy, there was a way of doing things, and then Batman disturbed that, and that's what creates a Joker, and that's when Batman's got to be like, what the fuck do I do now? Because no one's playing by the rules. And it's because he broke up that thing where he took out the organized crime. It's called that for a reason. And now he's got this anarchist on the loose.
Yeah, very cool stuff. I mean, like, because I just watched a docuseries on Netflix looking at the corruption in New York in the 70s and the 80s and all that kind of stuff, and what kind of things happen. And that, to me, and I think we're going to talk more about that in the second one when we review Dark Knight, but of course when they bring up Rico and all that kind of stuff, is really, really cool. So like that, we're going to want to talk a lot. I'm going to want to talk more about there, but it's just the idea of the organized crime thing is like, here is the movie where, yes, it's the old rules, everyone's playing by them. Second one's complete anarchy. No one knows what's going on.
It's still trans, because who's in Maroni is the pet. So it's still going through the organized crime, but just really breaking it down in that one.
Correct. Yeah, and like that was really, like, that one's really cool, like that meeting and the kitchen scene and all that kind of stuff. It's just like cool stuff that Really, really cool stuff going through this. Anyways, getting back to this one. Jim Gordon in this. Let's spend a little bit of time on him. I mean, I really like where he's coming from here. I think the idea that he's a character making his own decisions. He's like, oh, what do you think? Like that scene where he's, confronts Gordon in his backyard, or that like garbage chute thing where
so we're talking about Batman and Gordon.
The relationship between Batman and Gordon. I genuinely love that thing so much. It's really, really cool. It's the idea of like, oh, I think he's trying to help, how he earns his trust. He builds these things. Is a really cool thing. I loved it.
Oh, yeah, I don't have any more to say about Gordon. I really like him, but I think my favorite version of him is in Dark Knight.
Yeah,
I just like that he got Gary Oldman to be Gordon and gave him. Obviously, at that point, we just had the animated series and the Tim Burton films to go off of, but it was like, oh, well, like I actually care about him a lot more in this,
right?
Because it's more concentrated time with him. Because you could go episodes without seeing Gordon. Maybe, I don't even know now, but like he's never really the focus. He is important though.
Yeah.
And then I do not like him in the Adam West one, and as we went through the Tim Burton ones, he's like barely in it in Batman. I don't even think they interact really in Batman Returns.
No, really don't.
But yeah, I think he's good. I don't know if we wanted to talk about Ra's al Ghul.
Yes.
Ra's al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul, who knows how to say it. I was convinced it's Ra's al Ghul in this movie, but it's not. It's Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, I mean, we struggle enough with regular names. Ra's, whatever. I'll say Ra's.
For this movie, it's Ra's. For
right.
Sure, it's Ra's al Ghul.
So I love the idea of how they play with immortality and all that kind of stuff with this character. Because, of course, this is a character that's supposed to be immortal and all that kind of stuff. And bringing it into the real world, immortality doesn't exist. But I love the fact that they're like, no, it's not a person. That's ridiculous. It's the idea that's immortal.
Yes, there's always going to be a Ra's al Ghul.
Yes. And it's a Ra's al Ghul as a title here. Like this, to me.
Yeah, the demon head. Well, it is, but it's just... In the comics, it is as well. It's just he has the Lazarus pit to keep it going.
Correct. So it's like, it would be the same thing because there's many points in time in the comics and the animated series and the animated movies where Ra's is basically saying like the League needs a new leader and my time is up soon.
I want it to be Batman.
Yeah, I want it to be Batman, and then Batman always reluctantly is like saying no because you guys killed. I don't do that. Like. There's more to it than that, obviously, in the different forms of media, but it's always like that, and it's a really, really cool thing between them. And then you get a little bit of that here too, in that initiation scene and the training scene and all that kind of stuff, which is absolutely fascinating. Yeah.
It's a good character.
Yep. Absolutely fascinating.
I don't really want to talk about the performance. It's a good character. Ra's al Ghul, great.
What?
I remember because I watched the cartoon that I already knew that obviously Liam Neeson was going to be Ra's al Ghul, but I did like that they still kept that whole idea of like the fake out with Ducard, and I thought
even on IMDb right now, it still lists him as
Ducard.
Ducard. It doesn't list him as Ra's al Ghul.
Because it's Ken Watanabe as
Ken I can't pronounce his name. He's listed as Ra's in this. And one thing that I thought was really, really cool too is this casting that I thought was awesome. That party scene where the woman's like, here, I have someone I need you to meet. Am I saying this properly, Ra's? And it actually looks like a younger version of Ken. I'm like, that was really, really cool.
That was smart.
Yeah, that was really, really fun. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, nope, cheap parlor tricks. I'm like, that's clever. Love it. Really good.
I do like that.
Yeah.
Or when he's like, all right, I'm going to leave you now. And he's like, what? I can't beat up two of your pawns. I always like that exchange for some reason. I was like, he's really feeling himself now. The
idea that Ra's al Ghul on the mansion scene, whereas like he like when Bruce is trapped under the burning log, he's like, justice is balance. You left me for dead, burned my
that
down.
Part I don't like.
That's the part I don't like. because
I
he's
feel like
like,
we're gonna say the same thing.
yeah,
He clearly saved him and did not leave him for dead.
correct. But
And it's
I
weird
feel
that
like,
he's just like, no, you did. And I'm like, but that they even made a point of having the guy be like, I'm gonna tell him what you did for him.
yeah, I
It's
didn't like
like,
that scene. It
just
was
cut
one of
that
those
scene
scenes.
then, so that he can have the plausible deniability of, no, you did leave me for dead. Fuck you.
Yeah. To me, it was one of those things where the debate in my head, and this is a thought that I don't think I've ever thought about before, but do you feel like, okay, the title of Roz gets passed down and he was the next in line, and that he killed the Roz that was there, was the Ken
I'm gonna
Ken.
be honest with you. I don't think that guy was ever Ra's
So,
al Ghul. I think that's
right,
always part of the
I think
deception.
that was always the deception. Okay.
Yes,
Because that was one of the
because
things that
that's
was,
how it works. When I first met him in the cartoon,
mhm.
as well,
'Cause-
is that he always has that switch off,
right.
and it's part of seeing if Bruce Wayne has the detective skills to figure it out.
Right.
Because when you go to the third movie, I feel like they're implying that
He's always been.
Liam Neeson was Ra's al Ghul back then, even.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't make sense for him to be
Mm.
next in line in this movie.
Yeah, so that line of dialogue is kind of weird in the sense where he kind of is like, hey, you left the idea of me and the idea of, like, when you thought that was Roz, you left that person for dead and you burnt that person's house, and you're gonna take that and be like, that's my pain. I'm like, that was weird to me. I was like, no,
Maybe that is what he's doing, but I'm just like
Yeah.
like I don't like it because the movie even shines a light on this person's gonna say what you did for him.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's always been like a thing that bugs me. Where I'm like, but he didn't leave you for dead,
Yeah.
and you probably have that information. So
Yeah.
one of those lines needs to be removed.
One of the lines needs to be removed. I just, like, you burned down my house, you burned down everything I worked for. That would have been enough.
Yeah, that makes sense. Or
Yeah.
even if he was just like, I don't really care that you saved me. I had a plan and I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
doing it. So this is
Yeah,
happening.
Yeah, I was wondering if that line bothered you this time around or not, because
It always
not
bothered me. It's never
Okay.
been something I like. I've always been like, that what? No, he didn't do that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a lot of the great points of this movie. Where are some things that you would have loved? What would have made this movie better for you? If that's a fair question.
I think it's a bit too earnest. I like there is humor in it, but I just feel like it, yes, there's a character named Joker in it, but I just feel like it's not as fun for me. And I'm not saying like it needs to be Marvel styles. Like it's just it feels so self-serious at times.
It's very serious.
I'm just like that has always been a block for me. Like it's so I have spent most of this episode talking about what I like because I want to say that I think this holds up. Like my appreciation for not just this movie, but how all three movies work together to tell a story has only been heightened, like by rewatching just this first movie, and then we'll see how it goes for the other two. But like watching this movie, you're like, but look at all the seeds for what I remember from those other two movies coming in, and I think that's good. And I can even say like this is what's good about Dark Knight in relation to all three, or Dark Knight Rises in relation to this trilogy. And I think that's what I'm doing for this movie as well, is that I'm focusing on what works in relation to the three movies and not necessarily what works for me. And so like, yeah, the Rachel stuff seems like someone told Christopher Nolan, you need a love interest story.
Yeah.
And he was like, nah.
Yeah, it seemed like an afterthought.
The seriousness of it, I don't know how to fix that. I just feel like there was an element of, and I don't want him to be like Tobey Maguire, either being like wahoo while he's being Batman, but like, which is what I was talking about, like that when you watch someone doing something they like doing, and like, so like Michael Keaton Batman like seemed like he enjoyed doing the Batman stuff.
Yes.
This, and I know he's learning, but like there's no point where I'm like, and it's mostly because of how they shoot the fight scenes. It's him being like, ugh, and he seems so labored, and he's like, and I'm like, yeah, it's just so serious, and like there's no element of like, I guess the one time is when Alfred calls him out and he's like, what do you call that? And he's like, that's just damn good TV. Like, I like that element of it because it is still highlighting that like he is human to that point of
Yes.
like he can still recognize like, well, yeah, that's cool. I did that. That's cool that I did that. So I think I don't know that it makes it a better movie on the whole, but if it were up to me, those are things that I would remove or add.
Yeah, because the comedic beats are never around Batman. They're around more people reacting to Batman, doing silly things like Alfred. One of the funnier things is like, oh yeah, like well, when he was declared legally dead, all his worldly possessions got left to Alfred, and then Alfred being like having that snarky kind of thing where he's like, you can borrow the rolls if you want, you just return it with a full tank of gas.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and I like that stuff. I like that interaction with him, and because like even he doesn't say anything, but his smile he gives Alfred after that says a lot about their relationship. And I really like. I guess that was the other thing. I was like, so he can just be like, I'm alive now, and there's no like questions about it. Like, wouldn't there be like blood? I mean, I don't want to watch that, but it just seemed like everyone's like, oh, you're back. Like, especially the guy that was like running Wayne Tech or Wayne Industries. I was like. I guess it's because he was like, oh, I'm not going to get in your way. But I feel like if I were someone who was like, good, I've commandeered this company and now I'm going to do what I wanted with it. If the heir came back, I'd be like, I don't believe it because you were declared dead. And I feel like,
there'd be a little bit more
like, I'd be like, no, I want to test some stuff.
Yeah, I'd feel like there'd be a little bit more resistance. Even the way the secretary was like, wait, what? It was just like, okay, I know it's
a bunch of pictures of him around
but
that you're like, oh yeah, that's
it's just like, wait, you're trying to tell me you're Bruce Wayne. Can I see some ID? Like, something like that.
Yeah, like it just seemed like that was like, again, I am not here to be like, I wish there was a scene where he had to prove who he was. Yeah. I'm just saying like in this, when you're making everything so realistic, that seems like a missed point, like some kind of talking point of like, but he seems like they made a point to be like, no, you were actually declared dead. It's not just like people like, oh, I guess he's dead because he's been missing. And like, no, you're legally declared dead. You're your assets were given to someone else. And then he just comes back and everyone's like, oh, he's back. Did you hear? And I'm like,
even like a little bit of dialogue where the Rachel Dawes, the guy that's at the DA's office that is romantically interested in Rachel Dawes, it's like, hey, did you hear your friend Bruce is back? Like, what? I thought he died. Like, even was like, no, they could have inserted some sort of dialogue.
Oh, yeah, like there. That would have been a way to be like, no, like it's verified. It's really him.
No, it's him. Like they tested, they never found a body. They never did this. So yeah, he must be alive. He just went on a 7-year hiatus or whatever, a leap year or whatever. So like even something like that, it's a missed point. You're absolutely right. Because no point of me wants to go like, oh, he's going to the hospital now. He's getting.
Yeah, I don't want to watch that.
It's the same issue of like you having an issue of like, I don't care about him doing the detective stuff. Like that's not the detective. Like he's not the world's greatest detective in this version of Batman. He just has more money and resources. You don't care about the Batman stuff, like the detective stuff, right? It'd be the exact same thing.
To be fair, I do think he does a lot of like detecting in Dark Knight, like going around during the day and like looking for stuff. I just don't ever care about that stuff. Like I'm like, I don't want to watch this.
Or it's the idea that like whenever I'm like, okay, well, how does he get back to Gotham? And you're like, I don't care. He's Batman. He figured it out. I don't care.
Yeah,
like,
that's different than the movie being like, hey, we declared you dead. Now you're back, and no one is going to say anything about it. Right. In those other instances, it's like, no, he's just doing it, and the movie isn't trying to make it seem like there's no way he could have done it, or that like people put stuff in place specifically so he couldn't do it. It's just like, no, he did it. He's Batman.
Yep.
And I'm like, I'm fine with that. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah. Well, at that point, the movie stumbles at so many points. You're just like, yep, we're suspending belief on a couple of things. Let's just go with this.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really, really fun. So yeah, this movie was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Is there anything you would want to change?
I don't know, man. I think the Rachel Dawes stuff for sure. I wish she was better written. I wish that it was not only the Thomas Wayne. I wish the whole family life would have been fleshed out a little bit more. Like Martha had more dialogue in there and all that kind of stuff, to really make it so that it makes the whole movie makes it seem like Thomas Wayne's the only one that matters. Even Alfred's like doesn't bring up Martha whatsoever. So I feel bad for Martha's character, and just the idea of like, hey, we want more diverse people on set, having speaking roles and all that kind of stuff, and more women and all that kind of stuff. And this movie does a good job of it too, because it like the international spots, it does do a really, really good job of doing that. The one thing that I was thinking too, what I don't know how to make this movie better. I really don't.
Oh, I have one. I wish the fighting scenes were better. I don't like the fighting scenes in this.
Really?
I don't like the flurry of camera cuts and stuff. Like I'm just
I
like,
see.
all right, well, okay. That is one thing where Zack Snyder got it right.
Zack Snyder,
let's actually watch him fight people.
Yeah, but I feel like he got it right because of the success of the Arkham games, and that
still got it right.
He absolutely did.
I don't care. Like even Christopher Nolan had, which when we rewatch it wasn't amazing, but it's still better in the Tim Burton films. Like you can actually see what's happening in the Tim Burton films.
Yeah.
So both people had like stuff to visually base it off of, and he just went, just shake the camera around. I don't know.
Yeah. But you know what I think was really, really cool this time around is both scenes where Batman's taking out the thugs and all that kind of stuff. The first with the shipping container yard, and the second with the Arkham scene where they're pumping drugs into the water. The thing that I think was really, really cool about that was that Nolan kind of starts to put it from the perspective of thugs, right? We see Batman as the same kind of Batman from the villain's point of view that you get from Suicide Squad.
Well, you see him as a blur.
Yeah, you see him as
So
blurred.
it's not-
You see him as this thing
yeah.
that's just like a mystery, and you're like,
Which
that's a lot.
I don't think is a point of view of the thug. I mean, it's a point of view of a bystander.
Right.
Like, oh, what was that blur that took that person out? But like, I don't think that's how you'd feel if you were the one being taken out.
Sure. But it was just one of those things where, I mean, like, that added to that scene so much more. That magic of who Batman is, how he functions, all that kind of stuff is just like, I'm just going to rappel down, grab you, lift you up, and all that kind of stuff. Interrogate you with this drop thing. It's absolutely awesome what he does with that. But you're absolutely right. The fight scenes, the choreography could have been cleaned up a little bit. But
I mean, there was no choreography. It was like, just you guys all wrestle and we'll cut around it.
Right. Wait, hold on. Wait. Pause. Okay. I got to pee real bad. Oh. Yeah, another thing about the fight scenes that I think is very, very disappointing is the fact that this movie, I think more than most movies of featuring Batman, goes to show you his training in regards to his combat skills, like how with the League of Shadows, like the training that he did and that whole like ninja scene that he did, like they really go to show you how he's supposed to be a really like a good skilled combative fighter, even in the prison scene where he's like your practice and all that kind of stuff. So he's training to get.
Well, I guess what I think what you're saying is that I don't feel like he actually evolved past that prison scene. Like it seems like even that scene where he's like, "What? I can't take out 2 of your pawns," and then he brings 4 people in, and then he's like, "Yeah, he did the same thing. He just took one guy out and like knocked him down, and then everyone else followed him." Like that's exactly the tactic he used at the when we first met him.
Right.
It didn't seem like he was like, again, most of his training that I remember from the movie is him with a sword, which he doesn't use throughout the movie. And then the rest of it is, can he take a hit? Because he's on those like pegs and they're hitting him with sticks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I don't know that the movie actually did go into him being a skilled fighter. It seems like he was always just this angry guy that could take a hit and then just kept going. I think what that training was supposed to show you was how he would start being able to take people out quietly. And that's more of just apprehension, less of hand-to-hand combat.
Gotcha. I was just thinking that's a disconnect. I mean, like this going to show you the fighting skill, but not actually like following through with like the camera work of like, oh, here's evidence that he got better. Like, you know what I mean?
It didn't seem like he got better at fighting. It just seems like he's like, I'll take you to the ground and whatever happens. And I remember when the movie came out, even before, they talked a lot about like, he's just a guy that'll use everything to get the job done. Like, so I know it is a martial art. I don't remember what it's called, but it is based on being able to like use all of your body to like hit people. So he's hitting people with like this part of his elbow,
right,
and like using the material around you as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I mean, it would have been nice if they shot it in a way where I could see that outside of that first prison fight.
Yeah, because you know you're absolutely right, because in that scene where he gets to Roz's house and like they basically start beating up on him right away because like death waits for no one. Roz is basically saying like, oh, you're going into this position, like this martial arts move and this position and this like, so they're going out of the way to show you like he's got martial arts training already.
Mm-hmm.
So you're absolutely right about that. Like the League of Shadows didn't teach him how to be a better fighter. They just taught him how to be more deceptive and theatrical and all that kind of stuff. So that's a very, very, very good point. With that being said, this is a Batman that already knew how to fight. Because one would argue that he probably, through his privilege, just found people to train him.
I mean, that's what I like about Batman is that he's taught by different people. It's what makes him good is that he's got so no one person can be like, I know exactly what he's gonna do because I'm the one who trained him. It's that like he gets the deception from the League of Shadows, he gets his fighting from someone else.
Detective,
or even when he works, or I mean, whoever. But like that is what I like is that he is like he has pieced together who he is from all these different influences. And comment, I don't know if they're ever going to get to it, but like that he worked with Zatanna's dad, Zatara or whatever, to be able to be the escape artist that he can be. So yeah, like if the movie wanted to be like he learned everything from the League of Shadows, that's fine, but I'm glad they didn't. I think that's true. It's good that he has pieced it together and no one person could be able to be like, I know every movie he's gonna do, because I like, even with Bane, it's like I feel like that's what they were trying to do, is like, oh, I know all your moves because I also was trained by League of Shadows, but like realistically it would be that like he didn't account for this one thing that Batman learned from someone else instead of what he didn't account for Catwoman shooting him.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, you're absolutely right that the fight sequences could definitely be better here. I think to the point that you were making before, he starts having fun as Batman, I think, in the second one.
Maybe.
I feel like when he's taking out in the parking garage scene where he's taking people out, he's like, and the guy's like, what makes you different from us? And he just snarkily says, I'm not wearing hockey pads.
I mean, that's a laugh line. I don't know if he's having fun, because
I feel like that's
genuinely
the first
annoyed.
I feel like that's the first time you can say he's having fun or something like that. Like that's the best evidence I could be like, yeah, he's having fun as Batman now. That's the best.
I would maybe like when the Bat Pod comes out of the Batmobile, I'm like, maybe that was fun for him.
Sure.
I don't know. Anyway, let's rate this thing.
Yep.
We're now talking about other movies, so I think that means we're done with this one.
Yeah, that's true. All right, I'm sitting at a 9.
I am at an 8.5. It is a solid movie. You probably thought I was going to say 10 with all the praise, but as I said, I wasn't trying to dwell on what I personally don't like. I was trying to figure out what works about what Christopher Nolan in particular is trying to accomplish. That still leaves me with an 8.5 in terms of my enjoyment of the film.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm definitely at a 9. I love this movie so much. Watching this was so enjoyable. It was, everything about it was great.
I'm happy that it held up.
Yeah.
That whole Spider-Man 2 thing really scared me.
That Spider-Man 2 thing really shocked me. I
was like, oh shit.
That movie the same. I used to, like, in regards to like a lot of our movie rankings, I ranked that movie so high. And now if we re-rank stuff, I'm like, I don't know if it's going to sit there anymore. It's definitely true.
But yeah, I'm glad that it held up, and I'm glad that it has made me even more enthusiastic about the trilogy as a whole.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Batman Begins. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. If you liked this, you're gonna love this next bit of information I have for you. We're a part of That Shelf's podcast network, so that means you can go to thatshelf.com and find other great podcasts like Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, and No Budget Nightmares. What a great theme song. There's more too. So you're just gonna have to go there and enjoy all the different podcasts and content on thatshelf.com. If you'd like to see older episodes of Spoiled Rotten, please go to tdfelverything.com/spoiledrotten, and you'll be able to get our full catalog of episodes. And in addition to that, please hit us up on Twitter at TDFSpoiled, and our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. We are on all sorts of podcatchers like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Radio Public. Please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, and talk about us everywhere that you like to talk about things. That's all I have to say. What about you, Ben?
No, I think that's it. I think you guys should obviously do all those things that Daniel said, as well as maybe give a shout out to the Uncolonized podcast that you've been speaking on, because I think a lot of stuff that you've been talking about recently has been really, really cool and great.
Yes, I mean, not part of the That Shelf Podcast Network, but a podcast that is worth listening to. Yes,
very much so. And Daniel said some really, really cool things that I think a lot of people should hear. So, definitely putting that out there, that you should definitely check out those thoughts, because they're very, very, very interesting.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, guys, we did it.
Sure.
I think. Oh no, I'm not thinking probably. Yeah, I don't know what we're doing next, because I'm living in August 1st, as well as whenever this episode actually comes out. So
Probably
I'm not making any promises on what's next. Just you'll have to tune in.
Yeah, it's a surprise.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.